I think it's a real pleasure to be moderating this panel today on building a digital ecosystem. I think this is a topic that has over the last few years gained increasing importance in all domains, including in the policy space. I have myself been involved with a lot of these initiatives around the National Digital Health Mission, telemedicine, etc. So I have sort of seen that evolution happening. And of course, COVID has sort of given a fillip and acceleration to a number of these initiatives, but it's on us to sort of take them in the right direction, sustain the momentum, put in place the correct frameworks, etc. So I think I'll just very, very quickly set the context because we have a very eminent panel here with us, so I don't want to be speaking for very long myself, and I'm sure we all want to hear from them. But I think just very, very briefly in terms of digital health and why it's become so important in the recent times, I think there's several drivers for that. One is the population and the demographics itself. While on the one hand, we have a very young population, on the other hand, we're also seeing an increase in the number of senior citizens and the share of the elderly population, and that's only going to go up. So that kind of creates additional demands, different kinds of demands from our health system that we need to meet. There is rapid urbanization that we are seeing, and it's also giving rise to a lot of the inequities, both urban-rural as well as within the urban space itself, between the bigger cities and the tier 2 and the tier 3 cities. We're also seeing a growing middle class and sort of rising purchasing capacity. And of course, we are faced with a dual burden of disease, as we refer to it popularly, in terms of the communicable diseases, the non-communicable diseases, now featuring in a very big way as well. So I think a lot of these drivers, a lot of these external forces, internal forces in terms of inequity, our shortage of doctors, specialists, all of this is, I think, making digital become more and more prominent. And I think that is the context and the backdrop to which we are having this discussion today. So as I said, we have a very eminent panel. They've already been briefly introduced, so I won't waste any time, further time, and I'll go straight ahead to the questions. So perhaps we can begin with Mr. Amit Chopra. And my question to you, sir, would be in terms of how you've seen the digital landscape changing, how you've seen it evolve, and what do you really think are some of the key opportunities for India in the current scenario and as we look ahead? So over to you, sir.
Wonderful. So thank you very much to you and for the question, and thanks to IHW for inviting me to this conference. So, you made some very relevant context-setting remarks just now, which is the huge importance of incorporating digital technologies into our healthcare program and agenda for the country. From the perspective of Thermo Fisher, which is one of the world's largest companies in life sciences and healthcare and diagnostics, I want to share with you how digital technologies have started getting embedded and how they're revolutionizing the way we innovate and deliver products which ultimately are helping our partners across the world and governments and nations in combating COVID, for example. So many years ago, Thermo Fisher decided to digitally transform itself and started with the very fundamentals of how we innovate. And we started building artificial intelligence, machine learning algorithms into our software development, into our embedded software development. All of our technologies and products that we innovate are now cloud connected. And that provides unbelievable capabilities in the hands of the end consumers, whether it's medical professionals, whether it's hospitals or diagnostic labs. A great example, which is very current, is we have the rapid RT-PCR technology, which we launched in India, where you can have very, very highly accurate testing done in 30 minutes flat, which is based on the RT-PCR principles. And that technology is embedded with artificial intelligence, which allows us to have state-of-the-art, gold standard testing done in 30 minutes flat. And this is the technology being used at multiple airports for screening for all kinds of variants of COVID. And I can give multiple such examples of how AI is becoming embedded into the way we innovate, which ultimately is making huge difference to patient care. It's making a huge difference in the delivery of advanced healthcare, into accurate analysis and diagnosis, which is ultimately benefiting our own country and our own citizens. Similarly, as we look at creating levels of skill and improving skill levels in the country, virtual reality and augmented reality are becoming even more important. During the pandemic, where we were all forced to lock down, and obviously connectivity between suppliers and customers became very restricted, we developed tools, for example, the Labatar tool, where customers could visualize using virtual reality how a lab for COVID-19, for example, diagnosis would look like, what would be the workflow like, and how could they actually set up that lab. And we helped, this tool helped hundreds of labs in India and also around the world visualize and put together the kind of workflow and space and investments that they needed to set up their COVID-19 diagnostics capabilities. This is a great example of how VR and AR can be used to actually very dramatically respond to crises that we were all up against. And finally, when we look at how what COVID has done, or sort of the impact of COVID on our healthcare systems. Today, what used to be a very niche diagnostic technique, which was RT-PCR, which is based on molecular diagnostics, has become mainstream. And from something like 200 labs which had RT-PCR capabilities, because a vast chunk of the work done on RT-PCR was actually on research rather than diagnostics, we now have more than 2,000 labs in the country, and it's become a routine mainstream activity. And let me tell you, there's a lot of digital technologies that go into RT-PCR, both in the sample preparation as well as the amplification and diagnosis of the virus. I think this will have a revolutionary impact on molecular diagnostics as a field in the country, because while we have set up the infrastructure for COVID, but actually the same infrastructure can be used to diagnose dozens of other diseases which are hard to diagnose, or where accuracy is not so good, or where you need slightly more precise diagnosis. For example, disease like sepsis, where treatment can be sort of precision tailored. So I hope with these examples that I shared with you, you get a sense of how important digital technologies are, and how this is revolutionizing healthcare, and how exciting this whole field is going forward.
Thank you. That was very, very insightful. And I'll actually sort of in continuation take up the next question with my next panelist, Ms. Khushbu Agarwal. So I think the points that Mr. Chopra raised in terms of the potential of these new technologies, I think there's no doubt that there is a huge potential, and so many of these have now emerged. I think the challenge in a country like India, as we know, in terms of how do we actually get these technologies to everyone, given all the different kinds of inequities that we face. Government, as I said, has launched some initiatives, but how do we really, in your view, make these effective, and where does public-private partnership perhaps come in to ensure that we can actually maximize the potential of these great emerging technologies?
Thank you so much, Urvashi. So I think a very relevant question in today's time. What COVID-19 has done in the last couple of years, it has led a lot of people who were not used to digital or digital health to first trials, right? It was almost like a forced trial that a lot of us took. we have to ensure that a lot of this continues even if we foray into a non-COVID world. We should leverage this time. COVID was a disastrous time, but it has had its own pros. We have to ensure that there's a continuity in what was created by the government, by the private sector, and ensure that the goodness of it continues. So to give you some few examples here, we've seen that the NDHM is coming up with the Digital Health Mission, where they're creating this amazing health ID concept so that all of our records are out there on the cloud in a secure manner, much like Aadhaar was. We can actually ensure that technologies such as blockchain come into being and are accelerated, given that digital health records have become mainstay during the COVID time. And NDHM can actually accelerate a lot of that with support from the private sector, of course, right? Because it is an amalgamation of all of the healthcare providers across the public-private sector. Similarly, I would say there's a big role the private sector has to play here in terms of enabling technologies at the ground level. India is a country of many countries. We have thousands of languages which are spoken. Language changes every few kilometers. It also is a country of many cultures, right? The way we consume food, the way we think of medicine intake, the way we speak and communicate our feelings and symptoms, it all gets very, very different. It's important that the solutions that are created, and that is one mission we are on to at Xyla, are very inclusive and personalized to the last mile, which means that if I have a platform which is conversing with the patient, is trying to help them with better health, can it actually understand their unique circumstances of their health, their lifestyle, their language, their culture, their routines, their affordability, and then implement those solutions. Only then we can actually help out the 1.3 billion people who are out there seeking health. So an example that comes to my mind from what we envisaged and then created during the COVID time last 2 years. During COVID, symptoms were changing every second. There were new lab reports every few minutes. It was very important that a confidant, a healthcare expert was with you. Be it 3 a.m. or 3 p.m., Diwali or Holi or Republic Day, it did not matter, right? So healthcare at that time demanded a lot of continuity in care, right? So it is also very critical, Urvashi, to your point, you said we are dealing with a dual disease crisis of chronic and acute diseases. This will keep coming and going, right? In the last 1 decade, we've been talking about how NCD burden in India has become a mammoth, and suddenly we had COVID, and then suddenly we were in this world of acute diseases taking this shape. So during the COVID time, it became all the more evident that a chronic patient is dealing with more severe circumstances of an acute disease like COVID, and they need support 24/7. So how can we leverage technology that actually encompasses the physical infrastructure of the country and enables care through our healthcare professionals 24/7, right? And that is what we saw during COVID. We were handling 10,000 plus queries in a single day. And imagine, without technology, the number of team members or care team members or doctors I would need. But it was technology that led us to do that, right? Dr. Jailal spoke about health of the provider, a very, very relevant topic, especially as we've seen this circular floating out from residents who are demanding the best for themselves. We cannot ensure health for the provider until we augment it with technology, right? So imagine a single doctor in the country today would be able to see 100, at the max if they stretch themselves, 150 doctors, patients a day. With technology, for example, we are able to see 4,000 patients a day through a single care provider at Xyla. That is because there are algorithms which can do proactive check-ins, which can actually follow up, which a human cannot do, right? As a human doctor, how much ever great you are, you cannot go through the piles of data that reside for a patient for the last 10, 20 years, the longitudinal data, correlate with the medical protocols in your head, and come up with a response or an intervention within a second. But technology can do that, right? So here is where AI plays a role, right? AI or natural language processing engines can understand what the user is saying. They can actually correlate your longitudinal data with tons of medical protocols, and they can proactively suggest to you what to do next. And then if a doctor's advice is needed, the doctor comes in as an escalation. it's very important that we promote across public-private sector the adoption of digital health and technologies and augment them beautifully with the doctors, with the care team experts, with the physical infrastructure, and then that will lead to care at scale, healthcare access at the highest quality at scale. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you've raised several very important points on the health data, but also the interaction that we are seeing between NCDs and infectious disease. You mentioned COVID, and we've seen so many people with COVID and diabetes. TB and depression is another one that comes to my mind, which we have a growing burden of. So I think we increasingly need to look at that dimension as well, rather than looking at them in silos. So thank you for those insights. My next question would be to Mr. Vaibhav Tiwari. The home healthcare segment actually is one which has also been growing, and there's tremendous interest from a lot of stakeholders. I know I've been part of some of the discussions we've been having at NITI Aayog in terms of what do we need to do on home healthcare, and again, precisely because some of the drivers we are seeing in terms of the aging population, urbanization, smaller families, so need for more support at home, as well as the chronic conditions. So my question to you, sir, would be what do you really believe are some of the key steps that we need to take, perhaps from a policy side, perhaps from the regulatory perspective, to really drive and support the growth of the home healthcare segment?
So home healthcare, the way we are looking at it now, I think there is a lot of, as you rightly said, there is a lot of interest. We saw that during COVID also. I mean, last year, as Khushbu was talking about, I mean, during COVID, we saw home care became a lot more central to the way we could support COVID positive patients. So if you look at it, during the first wave of COVID, we worked with multiple state governments, supported over 4 lakh patients in home isolation along with 6 different state governments, did over 8 lakh teleconsults between doctors and healthcare workers. And that's something where we could really see a good combination of home healthcare as well as technology support the country in its hour of crisis. And that has continued even during wave 2, where we could support a lot of patients in their homes when we are facing shortage of beds in some locations, and of course need for oxygen. So there again the focus was that can we manage patients at home and only the patients who really need a hospital bed to go to the hospital. So in both those cases, we saw as a combination of on-ground presence as well as with technology, home care was able to support the country in a significant manner. And after that, as you rightly mentioned when you start speaking, is that the home care, especially NITI Aayog and elsewhere also is being looked at of what can we do to facilitate the growth of it. And I think there are 2-3 key areas. One is that, of course, the insurance support. So COVID home isolation was covered by insurance. And that's something which became a very, very positive thing at that time, because patients realized that even if they are getting treated at home, it's getting covered by insurance, and that was a big positive. And even if you see worldwide countries where home care is just is a very natural way of healthcare, like the US, their insurance covers home care quite extensively. So I think one great thing which we saw in COVID was insurance covering home care, and that's again something which can be a very, very big positive change for this industry to grow. And we are seeing that given that home care is accepted a lot more in all the healthcare ecosystem, whether with hospitals, with consumers, because I think the topic of the last panel as well as is that the acceptance of digital and acceptance of home care has become very, very significant in the last couple of years. So now with the acceptance of home care, and of course the industry also has been there for last 8 years, the kind of standards, quality standards we have adopted, the kind of growth which has happened, and the acceptance which has come, now with the policy support like insurance covering it, or seeing how we can have home care as part of government policies where we can when we look at reaching the healthcare out to every nook and corner of the country. In last panel, one of the panelists was talking about creating physical infrastructure in the rural areas, in the regions, right? That's again one area where home care along with care at centers can play a very significant role. So I would say two key areas which have started picking up quite a lot momentum in the last 2 years and can continue to support. One, of course, insurance support, and second, the government policies and the investment which is happening. Home care can play a significant part with the support of those.
Thank you. And I think the point on acceptance, I think in COVID we saw a lot of behavior change happen as well, I think from within the system as well as outside. Like telemedicine, I think is a classic example. It's not a new concept, but we just saw it take off so much more during the COVID era. So thank you very much for those insights. I'll take my next question to Ms. Swati Rangachari. So ma'am, we've spoken a lot about some of the trends we are seeing, some of the opportunities. We've spoken a little bit about public-private partnership, but if you could just delve a little bit more into that in terms of how do we really make it successful? And what are we missing in this whole digital health sort of puzzle, if we can call it that way? What are the missing elements? What should we be really focusing on to sort of make it work? Yeah.
Thank you so much, Urvashi, and it's a pleasure being here. I'm listening to every one of y'all. It's really amazing, the insights that are coming out. Your question actually hits a very fundamental aspect, and that is the whole framework. I wouldn't call it as gaps. I would think that the Ayushman Bharat Health Mission is actually now stepping forward. It's a very opportune time, right? Stepping forward to be all-inclusive in its architecture. And what I mean by that is, I mean, if you look at it from basic pillars, easy access, which is so important. I mean, healthcare cannot wait for a long time. I mean, you need it right now. So easy access, high quality diagnosis, both preventive treatment and otherwise. So, I mean, the amount of time that the medical staff and the doctors actually have in being able to focus on their efforts versus doing so many other things. Affordable, which digital can enable very effectively by almost stopping all the cost leaks that are there in the system. And in addition, and more coming from all that we've been talking about, is diversifying into, I wouldn't use the word verticals, but specialized areas where predictive analysis can play a big role. For example, mental health, cancer, areas where digital analysis, artificial intelligence, something that you had brought up, and other emerging technologies can work together to support the clinician in taking high quality diagnosis or support. So what I think where I'm coming from is the framework matters. In many ways, when we focus on specific areas, some other gaps might come up. So what Ayushman Bharat Health Mission is doing in terms of its objectives, of stepping back, looking at a more holistic, building blocks, so to say. You mentioned about health ID, health records will play a big role in ensuring that we have insurance reforms, which sits fundamental to healthcare in many ways. In other parts of the world, insurance plays a big role in preventive healthcare, which is not the case here. You have to go to a hospital for insurance. And the whole idea of healthcare now, the shift that I see happening is where people are, the whole idea is to stop a patient from going to the big hospitals in principle. So, I think in the previous panel they spoke about primary healthcare, for example, how digital can play a hybrid role of physical. I think Dr. Jayalal spoke about physical infrastructure being important, but a hub and spoke or better digitization to enable, I'm not sure, was it Portia or one of them spoke about, care in the villages. How do we connect the whole pieces together? So digitization plays a role like, the digital highways, like a glue, and bringing the whole framework together. Fundamental pillars, brilliant concept by the Ayushman Bharat Health Mission, but the whole thing sits on how we implement it effectively. So I'm glad that India is taking such a, we're taking, I think, big steps in bringing in such huge focus on digital healthcare. as a huge enabler. And I just hope this momentum is not taken over by so many other things that are happening. And I think that's where I would say sits the crux, the implementation of Ayushman Bharat Health Mission.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing up those points. And I think in particular, I loved your point on the importance we give to stopping people from going to hospital. I mean, I come from a public health background, so that's something I always feel very strongly, that historically also we've been a very cure-focused or hospital-focused health system, and we really need to shift, sort of in the other direction. And hopefully the pandemic will also give some more momentum to that. So I think that in particular is a very important point. Thank you, ma'am. So my next question would be to Mr. Vibhav Garg. And a couple of specific sort of questions to you, sir. One would be in terms of how do we really build capacity for the digital health ecosystem, I think in totality, because there's so many different stakeholders, and it can still be a fairly new, somewhat alien concept to many of them. So how do we build capacity, sort of get their ownership and buy-in, rather than it be something that we're sort of just pushing onto them, because this is something, a challenge I think we are grappling with in the government, where not everybody is at the same level of readiness or willingness to take this on. So I think that would be one question. And the other would be on the data side, given the sensitivity of the health data. We're talking a lot about it. How do we look at, privacy, consent, safety, all of that. So what do you think, and what more do you think that we should be really doing on that front, and how should we be approaching it? Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Urvashi, for the questions, and thanks for the organizer for having me here. I think I'm just trying to map these questions through the theme of the session, which is building digital health ecosystem. And before we talk about digital health ecosystem, let's talk about a little bit on health ecosystem, right? And when we talk about health ecosystem, I think the 4 clear areas in front of me are preventive care, diagnostic, curative, and then palliative as in where applicable, basically, right? Question comes is, do we have enough capacity in these 4 areas so that when we superimpose these 4 areas to digital health roadmap, then we are able to create those capacities further into those domains, right? And I think the challenge would remain is, if we see these 4 areas, and I think ma'am talked about it, preventive side of it, now we are talking about health and wellness centers. Ages, it has been primary health care, primary health center for us. There has been now, sort of new energy which has come into this. But even then, if you see this huge amount of work left to be done in the preventive side of it. And the more we work on that, we are burdening our health economy less and less towards the tertiary care or curative care side of it. And I think that's where the capacity building will play a very, very important area. And I'm picking up on, the Ayushman Bharat side of PMJ and Health and Wellness Center here. Now, at Health and Wellness Center, in few states, having a medical doctor is mandatory. In some of the states, it is the I think the midwife or a A&M which manages the Health and Wellness Center. Now, having that kind of a scenario at a preventive care center, how do we scale it up? And whether it's a scalable model or not, I think that's very, very important to understand, because the moment you say a doctor, an MBBS doctor managing a health and wellness center, are we utilizing that capacity enough at that stage, basically, right? Or A&M is a better model to have there. Then question comes is, once you have that person in place, then next question comes is the moment you are providing the basic care and you say, okay, I have done my level of diagnosis and the interventions. Let's now do more diagnostic to send you to the next level of care, which is secondary or tertiary. There again comes the issue of capacity building, and here I'm talking about, very basic model that Ayushman Bharat took up was a, Arogya Mitra model, right? In the Ayushman Bharat Arogya Mitra, where they found out that each of the empaneled hospital is struggling to guide the patient coming to the hospital, the beneficiary to the hospital. Can we have a very simple role called Arogya Mitra, who is actually guiding them through the process of not only availing the care, but how to get it reimbursed to the card that they have? And I think that's where the understanding of, capacity not in just in terms of the medical staff available, but also the paramedical and this kind of roles that are going to aid to the bandwidth of the medical professionals in the hospitals, basically. Otherwise, what will you end up doing is a doctor talking about, sir, aap idhar room mein chale jaiye, sir, aap udhar room mein chale. And I think you are wasting the bandwidth of a doctor, right, sitting out there. So I think it is important for us to identify, first of all, the roles that would add on to these four sort of segments of care that we're talking about. And then once we are trying to, as I said, superimpose them to the digital highway and they become digital health ecosystem, there comes another challenge. Because the challenge that you would find first is, today, at least the care that we're talking about, the healthcare, it is reimbursed either by government or a private insurer, right? They understand that you are hospitalized, you need a reimbursement. You are hospitalized, you need to pay for this particular care. Think about a little bit from a digital health angle. You have a software as a medical device. Today, who understand how much do I pay for this software in the ecosystem? So do we have a reimbursement mechanism? Do we have a pricing mechanism? Do we have a costing mechanism available for the care in the digital health ecosystem that we're talking about? I think even that capacity and those capabilities building is very, very important when we are seeing 5 years from today that somebody will be coming that, okay, here is a tool and I do remote monitoring through this tool for the patient sitting in Indore. What do I charge for it? And is the systems ready for that? I think those kind of questions need to be asked today because the technology company are developing them. They are not stopping that, okay, because there is no system available, let me not develop them. They are developing technologies. Therefore, it is important that parallelly we talk about the policies and the regulation to manage those technologies in the 5 years or 10 years to come. Otherwise, we are getting into an era where we are seeing something which is coming up. It is ready to be delivered, but there are no sort of intermediaries who can actually provide them to the right patients. I think those are the areas that I thought would be useful to build those capacities and create those capabilities in the system to be able to handle that next level of care, basically. Thank you.
Rishi, thank you so much. I have a couple of comments on a question you asked around data privacy and related, especially when it comes to digital healthcare. So, when we were during the April timeframe when India was going through such a massive impact of the second wave, the United Health Group being very well known in the healthcare space, both with the payers and the providers, a lot of our doctors from the US wanted to actually render support in telemedicine and teleconsultation, just to realize that, our licensing does not allow it. So that set me thinking after that, by the end of the day, India is known across the world for its IT and ITS industry, IT services industry. And in many ways, because of the scale of efforts that we do across various verticals, especially in the healthcare space, with such a mature, clinicians around in the country, I feel that we can also become a hub for healthcare for not only India, but across the world. So, with digitization coming in the forefront, we can actually become the hub for amazing amount of data analysis and predictability. But there's one catch when it comes to data protection and privacy. When we become a hub for citizens across the world, that means we are operationalizing or dealing with citizen data from outside of the country. And my company, Optum, currently is dealing with an immense amount of data from citizens across. Now, when we look at data privacy and protection, healthcare is sensitive data. It's not only personal data, but even non-personal data is sensitive data. And in that context, we need to ensure that our policies and laws addresses the jurisdiction of other countries too. There needs to be complementary jurisdictions. In that context, at least for a while, we become, we shouldn't try to localize their data and all that, because that could be a breach of their jurisdiction. So what we could do is first invest in becoming a hub for the world. Like we're the pharmacy for the world, let's become the digital analysis hub for the world, or digitization hub for the world, telemedicine hub for the world. And in that context, we operationalize the whole healthcare from India. The only catch is let's not try to localize other citizen data in our country. If this is addressed in policy, we maintain their privacy, basis their standards, we set our standards high, right? And we eventually then become a strong, mature local ecosystem with Ayushman Bharat Health Mission framework and become a hub to the world. This, in my opinion, if I may go one step further, can also become a brilliant trade bilaterals, where countries speak to each other on healthcare. And that, I believe, is the importance of healthcare that perhaps, people are waking up to today.
I'll just supplement to what ma'am just mentioned. I think so we already have personal data protection bill, which we are already discussing about, and we are providing comments from the industry as well. But I think it is high time that we start thinking towards a HIPAA kind of an act for the country as well. Now we are talking about a centralized platform for data collection, data portability, and integration. We better have a kind of a framework which governs the data portability and data integration in the country. And I think something like HIPAA would be very, very useful to think through much ahead in time so that we don't get into the trap when we reach there, basically. Thank you.
Just an additional point, I think very well said, and want to highlight that the entire mission towards digital health will require innovation from startups, innovators, companies to come up and, as we said, collaborate with the larger infrastructure, public health infrastructure, and so on. And certain ma'am absolutely are correct when they say that even though the regulations are coming and the government is very, very progressive, there are no compliances with respect to a startup, a health startup, for example, like ours, to follow certain ISO regulations, GDPR, which is more European-based, or HIPAA, which we follow so closely in the US. So we follow all three, for example, because we want to work globally. We work with insurance partners, but there is no such compliance as such. So we have to really find a fine line and a balance so that we are not slowing down the innovation. At the same time, we are ensuring that the data safety is protected, because a single goof up from one company can lead to a massive risk for our country towards PI data. Just one additional point on what, sir, the structure framework you give, I think very, very well put, and a fresh way to look at it. What we have seen, in our work with insurance companies, sir said that they should be focused on preventive care. More OPD leads to less IPD, less curative or tertiary care. Very, very accurate. However, what we've seen insurance companies facing, right? So you would imagine that if we have to ensure that preventive really grows, insurance has to cover it. But when I talk to insurance companies today and I say, hey, invest in what we do and cover it for your people, they tell me, Khushbu, that's great, but you know what? Without structured care pathways, I may be misused. Without a regulator on the provider ecosystem in the country, my claim ratios may go haywire. So just a simple, a singular urge I have, because we have such great dignitaries sitting here, that we really need to bring in an IRDA-like framework exists for insurance for the provider sector, so that the investment in preventive care can really multifold. So this will be my singular request from this session.
Thank you so much. And I think we've already had such a rich discussion, but we have a few more minutes left, so I don't want to waste those. We can have a quick round of concluding remarks, maybe from all the panelists. We'd begin with Mr. Chopra, please.
Thank you very much. So, all I would say is that fantastic discussions today. I think the biggest opportunity we have in our country is to democratize leading-edge tertiary healthcare and diagnostics, leveraging digital technologies. I think COVID is a great example of how we were forced to do it, and we have democratized a fairly advanced molecular diagnostic technique into every nook and corner of the country. And I think what COVID also has taught us is that we have the ability as a country and the entrepreneurial capabilities to truly bring costs down and bring that cost to a point where it becomes very affordable, even though it started as a very advanced technology. So I think democratizing these technologies will require global partnerships. And of course, the entrepreneurial spirit and entrepreneurial energies within our country, which have been sort of unleashed in the past few years. But I think when you combine that with global partnerships, technology partnerships, you work collaboratively with MNCs and establish a way of bringing the best into our country and then democratizing it. I think that's what will lead phenomenal outcomes for patient care and access.
Thank you so much. Mr. Vaibhav Tiwari, your concluding remarks, please.
Yeah, see, from our perspective, first of all, it's a great discussion to have it here. I think from our perspective, I think the way we look at it is that whether it's digital healthcare, the ship has sailed. And I think the most important point there is that consumers drive the demand, and we are seeing the massive change in consumer willingness and acceptance of searching healthcare online, consuming healthcare online, and of course we continuously engaged using digital medium for their healthcare requirements. And given that there's so much other innovation happening in digital, leveraging digital in other areas, I think that's a very, very critical point. Whether you are looking at food delivery, you are looking at any other service you are looking at, which is basically being driven so much by digital, the consumer behavior has continuously changed and will change a lot more rapidly. So us as an industry has to keep the pace with it, and I think there's a concept, what we see in the US now is what is called hospital at home. So I think the combination of digital and hospital at home is something which could be the future, and can really solve also some of the healthcare access problems which we have as a country. So if you look at digital and combination of digital and healthcare at home, I think we are in good hands going forward.
Thank you so much. Khushbu?
Thank you, Rishi. So I would just like to conclude by saying that we'll need a problem solution or a first principles approach to say that how do we solve for three big elephants in the room: access, affordability, and quality of healthcare. And I would say without digital, it will be a very, very slow journey. If you talk about access to deliver care in the nooks and corners of the country, when you talk of affordability, how do you have a 50 to 100x multiplier on a single doctor or a care provider through technology? When you talk about quality, how do you actually access metadata on the user digitally, not lying in piles of paper, to provide personalized data-driven care? So we will have to really fast pace this adoption and accept it with an open heart and deliver it across the country.
Thank you. Swati ma'am.
Thank you so much. So fundamentals, framework, very important. Ayushman Bharat's concept is brilliant. Implementation is key. The good thing is that the industry, government, citizens, they all have recognized digital adoption as a very critical aspect of healthcare infrastructure. So I just hope the government puts in further priority into ensuring the success of the digital health mission of India. And finally, utilize India as a testimony and as a case for the world. We can become the hub center of digital healthcare for the world. And that vision needs to get etched in somewhere so that it translates into our standards. It translates into the way we operate. Healthcare is universal. So the way we operate across countries and kind of bring ourselves into the forefront. So from the startup community to the very mature industries, how does everyone work together within the framework to ensure that India actually comes in the forefront of digital healthcare?
Thank you, ma'am. Sir, you have the last word.
Thank you, Urvashi. And you know what? I mean, I will conclude by saying I've been a big fan of the concept of Uberization of healthcare, right? And now we are almost very close to see that getting realized through Ayushman Bharat Digital Health Mission. But I think there are certain areas that we as a country need to watch out. So Uber, it was like hundreds of thousands of cars around me, but when I book one, it gets cancelled because the person doesn't want to go the way I want to go, right? The same should not happen with the healthcare. That we have all health in my hand through my mobile, but when I want a care, it is not delivered to me. So access becomes an issue just because everything is there and everybody's fighting for the same resource, and I'm denied the access, basically. So we should be careful for that. Number two, Uberization of health, great. Uber is the largest car company without owning a car. Let's not get into that. Let's keep building those infrastructure in the country. Digital health is great, but without physical infrastructure supporting it, it may fall flat. And therefore, it is important for us to keep developing, keep sort of funding the demand side of healthcare as well as keep funding on the supply side of healthcare. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I think we've had such a rich discussion. At least I've learned a lot, and I'm sure the audience would agree. And there's so many takeaways. There's so much that we need to do. The potential is obviously huge, but we really need to work on putting in place a very strong enabling system. And I think, as we've said, not lose sort of sight of the bigger goal, which is, the different pillars, whether we talk of universal health coverage, talk of affordability, accessibility, equity in a country like ours. And digital health is obviously a very, very big enabler, but it's a part of a bigger picture, and we should not lose sight of that. So I think some really, really important points made here. Thank you very much to all the panelists.